tonight I am going to be ranking movies. Now, I had to kind of establish some rules because there were a lot of movies based on literature in the 90s. There always are. So I've deliberately excluded family films. Like Disney did a lot of adaptations in the 90s. Some of them good, some of them great, some of them There's one that I actually have a really tender spot for. I don't know if you remember Tall Tale. It was like the only movie Patrick Swayze was in that I can think of where he was able to use his native Texas accent and he played Pecos Bill. That one was really fun despite being totally schlocky. But yeah, so I won't be including anything that's definitely a family film or that's definitely for younger children. I've also excluded anything that is really more for adults, but maybe had some crossover appeal to children. So things like, say, Kenneth Branagh's Much Ado About Nothing. Like that appealed to teens, but it's really more of a, grown up to teen movie. And then, yeah, so it looks like we've got some child of the 80s, teenager of the 90s. Same here, same here. And then 90s baby grew on the movies. Hooray. Okay, so welcome 80s and 90s kids. We're going to have a great time. All right, I was able to settle on 8 films that are definitely teen movies in that they are primarily about teenagers and are marketed to teenagers. They would have, of course, also had some crossover appeal for adults and other audiences, but definitely teen films. So let's start with number 8, which this one is a little interesting. You might at first say, oh, wait, that one came out in 2001. It doesn't count as a 90s movie. This one's a little bit tricky. It was shot in the 90s and it was meant to be released in 1999, but it was a little on the violent side. And the events at Columbine High School in Colorado happened right before this movie was supposed to be released. So it got bumped to 2001. And then unfortunately, less than 2 weeks after this movie came out, unfortunate for many, many reasons, the events of September 11th happened, which probably put a dent in movie going and people interested in a sad, violent story. But I think regardless, this one still sits squarely at the bottom for me because it just isn't very much fun. And that is the film O. This was based on Othello by William Shakespeare. And what they did was they took the story of the Moor of Venice, so Moor meaning a North African, who had gone to Venice and done really well and hooked up with his boss's daughter. But then there's this guy, Iago, who's super jealous of him. So he schemes and concocts this whole plan and eventually basically breaks Othello's mind until he ends up becoming the villain of the tale. And what they've done is translated that to a prep school in America. So Othello is like this, or Othello, Odin, as the character is now called, is this amazing basketball player. And, there's high school scheming and he's going out with the dean's daughter and all of that. This movie, it's too serious, it's too violent, and it's too sad. There's drug use and Odin does some pretty heinous stuff that he really is responsible for. He behaves very, very badly toward Desi, the part of Desdemona. He is, how do I say this in a streaming friendly way? He does things to her without her consent, and nobody made him do that. And then he does a lot of drugs, and nobody makes him do that either. So it's too over the top, and it just doesn't have a very realistic portrayal of how teenagers even behaved. It can be very, very difficult to translate Shakespeare's tragedies more so than his comedies. And yeah, anyway, this is the only one in the bunch that I will outright call a stinker and say that I'm just not a fan. It looks like some of you have not even, heard of this one. So, Ben saying, I've never even heard of it. Cats and Jam are saying Josh Hartnett and Julia Stiles can't get more 90s than that. It is true. Yeah, we've got more comments in the chat saying never saw this one. I'm not surprised. I saw it when it came out and I was not impressed. It's too heavy. It's really bad. It's way over the top. But this is so Julia Stiles was actually in 3 Shakespeare films for this time. She was in this one, which was based on Othello. And then she was in, of course, 10 Things I Hate About You. And then she was also in a very serious and dark version of Hamlet that came out. I think it was sometime in the 2000s. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I saw that one, where she played the equivalent of Ophelia, of course. All right, so let's move on to the next one. Now, I do want to encourage all of you to argue with me. As this list goes on, it gets harder and harder to do the rankings because most of the movies in this list are outstanding. This is one that I happen not to like, although I know people who love this movie, and that purely is based on my personal taste. I don't like movies that are about mean people behaving badly. That's just not how I unwind. I don't blame you at all. I'm very happy for you to enjoy this movie. If you like those really pulpy movies that are just trash, my kind of trash movies are movies that are so bad they're good, right? Like really cheesy, really campy. That's my kind of trash. Mean people being mean is not my kind of trash. So that's the only reason it's this far down on the list. And I'm very, very happy for you in the comments to argue with me and tell me why I'm wrong. And we'll go. And this one is, it's Cruel Intentions, which came out in 1999 and was based on the 1782 novel Les Liaisons Dangereuses. I do not speak French. The Dangerous Liaisons. And it's by an author whose name I cannot pronounce correctly, so I will just respectfully not attempt to. Piero Choderlos de Laclos? Choderlos, maybe? Choderlos de Laclos? Anyway, if you like pulpy smut, this book is for you. And it's about a pair of former lovers who conspire to ruin other people, and they end up ruining themselves. The movie translates this premise to the modern day, where a stepbrother and stepsister who have this weird, creepy, not entirely appropriate relationship, they get involved in similar nasty schemes. I wonder if part of why I didn't like it is this just mentally I rejected the idea of Buffy the Vampire Slayer being the bad guy. But also just they're just so nasty, and it's not my thing. But if you love this, please feel free, explain why. Is it because it's trashy? Is it because it's pulpy? Is it because it is satisfying to see the bad girl really get it in the end? Like, let me know why you like it. And maybe, not a huge chance, but maybe there's a chance that I might come around on my opinion. But let's see what you guys think. Okay, so we have one comment saying, teenagers usually look a bit past their teens. Yeah, Ray made that comment. It's pretty normal. Part of it is that hiring actual teenagers is extremely expensive. It's also just honestly harder to get a good performance out of people who are really young. So it is cheaper to hire adults because they can work longer hours. And then, yeah, we got Georgia saying she hadn't seen it. And then Bazemore, Reese Witherspoon was just attractive. I'm sorry, she's a beautiful girl. She's still lovely. Yeah, Reese Witherspoon has just that really gorgeous, wholesome, her smile is so beautiful. She's a lovely girl back then, and she's a beautiful woman now. And then we've got Ben saying, yeah, not really a fan. Haven't seen it since cinemas. So Georgia's saying, I thought that, that it is Sarah Michelle Gellar. She was blonde in Buffy, and then she goes brunette in this for a more dramatic look. And then Katzen says, I really like this one. Surprisingly good translation of a very time-specific text. And I liked both the book and the adult John Malkovich, Glenn Close adaptation. Okay, all right. So you liked it. That's okay. Ray and Kat says, I've seen a bad girl movie. One was enough. Nice. Cats and Jammer says, the big hype was the Sarah and Selma kiss. I forgot about that. I think I've only seen this movie. I may have only seen it once. I might have seen it twice, but yeah, I'll admit I didn't rewatch it for this live stream because I just don't have that kind of time. I wasn't interested. Won an MTV award. I am not surprised that in the 90s, it was like, oh, Selma Blair and Sarah Michelle Gellar smooching. Like, of course that won Best Kiss at MTV. Awesome. So those are some good memories there. Okay, so those are the only two on this list that I don't like. Let's move on to in number 6. And this is where I'm warning you. It actually got really hard for me to do this ranking This is not an indicator of quality from here on out. It was more like I was constantly shifting the position of these top six ones. I kind of knew my top three and then the next three. And then within this, I was just slotting them around because they're all so fun. They're just really, really fun. Now, this one is based on a play, which was based on an ancient Greek myth. And if you can guess in the chat before I get to it, 10 points to you. So this tells the ancient myth of a sculptor from the island of Cyprus who sculpts the statue of a beautiful woman, and he falls in love with her, and then Aphrodite grants his wish and he kisses his beautiful creation, and then she turns into a real woman and they have a beautiful love story and they live happily ever after. And that is the myth of Pygmalion, which in 1912 was adapted by George Bernard Shaw, and then later is turned into She's All That. So George Bernard Shaw's play Pygmalion took the idea of the sculptor sculpting the woman, and he created the character of Eliza Doolittle, and then she's a common Cockney flower girl. So in the theater district in London, she sells flowers and she speaks very poorly. And then Professor Henry Higgins makes a bet with his friend that he can teach her to speak properly and turn her into a lady and pass her off in high society. And you probably know this one better in its musical format as My Fair Lady. That's probably, I bet more people have seen My Fair Lady than have actually seen Pygmalion at this point. But My Fair Lady is really just Pygmalion, but with music added. And then She's All That brings the story a little closer to its origins. We have a young, dreamy Freddie Prinze Jr. who makes a bet with a young, dreamy Paul Walker, and they decide to transform the dorkiest girl in school into the prom queen in 6 weeks. So there's lots of twists and turns in this story where, you know, they catch feelings, and do they really feel for each other, or is this just about the bet? There's, of course, a prom scene. It's not a good 90s teen film without a prom scene. But in the end, this take on the character of Pygmalion means that your Henry Higgins character or your Pygmalion character, he is humbled just a little bit, and he comes around and is able to win the love of dorky Lainey Boggs, the girl that he transformed. And it's really sweet. I think the chemistry between all of these characters are really good. You have a young Anna Paquin in this playing the little sister of, Freddie Prinze Jr., and she's kind of the fairy godmother who does the transformation. This scene's wild. This is something that you wouldn't get away with now, where you have the little brother mixing a cocktail for a teenager who's coming to visit the house, and the dad's sitting there just like not even paying attention. Yeah. But let's see what you guys have to say. Pygmalion is such a sweet sounding name. It is. Actually, I think it would make a good name for a pet. Maybe especially if you had a pot-bellied pig. Yeah, we have a comment saying the movie gave Dawson's Creek theme song Kiss Me. Yeah, Kiss Me is used in this one. Very, very 90s anthem. Oh, and we have a confession in the chat. OMG, I had a huge crush on Freddie Prinze. Come on, who didn't, right? I think everyone did a little bit. And we have another comment in chat saying the Not Another Teen movie parody of this was hilarious. It was. That was, yeah. Yeah. There are good parody movies. I mean, I guess what they're still making, those scary movies. The first one was kind of over the top gross, but it did do a good job lampooning the horror genre. And Not Another Teen movie was pretty funny. Yeah, and Bazemore in the comments, she lets her hair down and switches to contacts, ROFL. Yeah, this is like the era when it's like you have a perfectly decent looking woman, but she's got glasses on, and then the glasses come off and it's like, oh my gosh, you're hot now? What? Who knew? Right? I think, it's a little more complicated these days. But yes, this is a very sweet and fun movie, and don't be mistaken by its position in number 6. It's just that there is such a glut. And if you ask me tomorrow, it might have a different spot. All right. Our next one. Now, I have a particular memory about this one, and see if you can guess the title, because I'm wearing my Hawaiian shirt in honor of this particular movie. So I went to go see this movie when it first came out with a bunch of friends, and we had they probably don't do this anymore in schools, but we had what we called the backwards dance, where the custom was for girls to ask guys to the dance. I mean, by I don't know, at my high school it was still, I'd say boys did most of the asking, but it wasn't unheard of for a girl to ask a boy to like prom or homecoming or something like that. It happened. But backwards dance was really more about like, you could go with a friend. It always had a fun theme. Sometimes you could go in costume. So we went to the movie theater, and my friends helped me out where I bought a popcorn bucket, and then I put a note in the popcorn asking this guy if he wanted to go to the dance with me. And I said, if he wanted to, then he could pass the popcorn back when he was done getting some. And if he didn't want to go with me, then he could just keep the popcorn bucket. And he passed the popcorn bucket back, which is, this is not a movie with a happy ending, but I had a really good time at the dance, and I had a nice time. Oh yeah, so I see in the chat, Sadie Hawkins. Yeah, so they used to call these Sadie Hawkins dances. We called it the backwards dance. I don't actually know who Sadie Hawkins is. If any of you know who Sadie Hawkins is, let me know. Let's see. Is it Teen Witch? No, it is not Teen Witch. It is, in fact, Romeo and Juliet. Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. Whenever I watch a Baz Luhrmann movie, it feels like he had about 100 cups of coffee while filming the beginning scenes. And then things kind of settle down a little bit. Like, it happens in this movie. It's all very hyper at the beginning. The same thing happened in like Moulin Rouge, where you're just, the first 10 minutes, you're just, whoa. And it's almost like sensory overload. Things settle down by the second act. And this scene in particular is a beautiful take on the balcony scene. I love the use of levels in it. You've got the balcony, the elevator, the pool, the lights, it's just really well done. Unlike the other movies on this list, Romeo and Juliet kept the original text. So all the other movies on this list have kind of translated the story, but the script is different. Maybe there'll be some references. This keeps Shakespeare's play, like the language is in there. There are moments where lines are lifted out of context, like the drugs are quick, which is something that's said later in the scene when drinking poison, when Romeo drinks the poison at the end. They move that to the scene where he goes to the party at the Capulets' house, and him and his friends get high on the way in. And then you get that lovely, fun dance scene with Mercutio in drag. And the actor who plays Mercutio in this he steals the show. He's my favorite character, hands down. And the story really works in the modern setting, where instead of this kind of like feudal system, you've got rival corporations and the kind of clearly very corrupt environment they live in, where gangs are ruling the streets. This was made at the peak of Leonardo DiCaprio being a teen heartthrob, and he really capably portrays Romeo as a very thoughtful and sensitive young man. But I've always been even more impressed by Claire Danes, who she manages to turn her Juliet into someone who is very determined, but is also deeply sensitive. And yeah, anyway, I have good memories about this one. It's not one I rewatch too often, but it does hold a special place in my heart. Let's see what you guys have to say about it. Katzen says, Leo is still getting dates based on how he looked in this movie. Well, he's definitely still dating girls that are the same age as Claire Danes. We'll just put it that way. And then we've got someone else in the chat, Chris. Hi, Chris, saying, OMG, love the fish tank scene. That is beautiful when they first spot each other. And they're at like the big party and they see each other through the fish tank. The colors in this movie are so vibrant and it's so saturated. Like, just the color schemes too. Like you notice with the costuming where you have the Montagues are kind of wearing more like Hawaiian shirts and a little bit more flamboyant color. And then you have sort of a mixed Anglo-Latino family over on the Capulet side. And they're wearing more like dark reds and leather and things like that. And it's just visually so stylish. But yeah, that scene with the fish tank and the song Kissing You. You remember the song, because that's in the script. It says that there is a song at the party, and it's this beautiful ballad that was for sure played at a lot of school dances for slow dances when I was a kid. Also in the chat, we've got Ben saying, my core memory of this film is the grill on John Leguizamo. There is that guy with that big grill. Yeah. And I love the way that they translated like the weaponry, where I remember it was Mr. Montague who says, my longsword, ho, and he's in the car and he reaches for his rifle, which is mounted, and that's the make of the gun, right? And it works. It works because you have this kind of violence. I think out of all of William Shakespeare's tragedies, Romeo and Juliet is the one that's going to be the easiest to translate to various settings because all of us can understand rival factions and then love finding a way, right? Like in American legend, we have like the Hatfields and McCoys, and there's like a love story that goes in there. And I think pretty much every culture on earth has some kind of Romeo and Juliet story. So that's why this one is so much easier to translate than, say, something like Othello, which is a little more culturally specific. We also have Ben saying, oh, and I get this scene at the fuel station confused with Zoolander. See, Chris is saying, when I defend the new Wuthering Heights, I'd compare it to this, but no one gets it. The dialogue wasn't changed. I mean, if you like the new Wuthering Heights, I'm very, very happy for you. I would hate for a film to be made and no one to enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it, but if you did, great. And I'll never tell you how to have fun. I probably wouldn't join you to watch it, but I'd make you popcorn so you could. Yes. Oh, good comment in the chat. Top 5 soundtracks of the 90s. Shirley, the soundtrack was so good. It had Love Me by the Cardigans. It had that amazing cover of When Doves Cry. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I definitely had that CD. Oh, I remember when that CD got scratched. Yeah. It was on a road trip to the beach. Oh my gosh, I'm having a memory flood back to me right now because you said that. We went out to the beach and I had the big CD Bible. You guys remember those big things where you stick the CD in, which is tastefully curated so everyone knows what good taste you have. I belonged to Columbia House and BMG and I got my CDs. And it wasn't her fault, but my friend did scratch it. She got it out and then she dropped it in the car and there was some sand and rocks in the bottom. And I had to buy a new copy of my Romeo and Juliet CD. Somehow I got over it and managed to live a productive life. We've also got in chat, West Side Story. West Side Story is fantastic. And that one is going to stay very relevant for a very, very long time because it's just pulling on these really primal things. Tribalism is extremely primal. So Romeo and Juliet and that pattern, you're always going to be able to go back to it. And Ben says, Baz was behind the sunscreen song. I did not know that. I'm going to look that up. Okay, we're now moving to the point where it was very, very difficult for me to sort the rankings. I really struggled with this one. But number 4 in our rankings is Cinderella. I have gushed about this movie previously. I love this one. This was made for TV rather than big screen theatrical release, and Disney made it for ABC, which is the TV station they own in America. It was produced by Whitney Houston, who wanted to do Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, which is based on the Charles Perrault version of Cinderella. That's the one that most people know, and it's definitely the most commonly adapted version. This one is so fun. It's so fun. It's got Brandy and Paolo Montalban, and they are just so young and cute and sweet, and there's great chemistry between these two. You've got Whitney Houston, again, playing the fairy godmother, and Whoopi Goldberg as the queen, who is very, very funny. She's, full on just political commentary these days, but rewatching this, I forgot, gosh, she's got such good comedy chops, and back in the 90s, she made some really, really funny films. This is such a colorful story, and it's told in the land of make-believe. The reason why this is such a good example of colorblind casting is that if you look at this, all attempt that this isn't trying to be something that's set in a real place, right? This is the land of make-believe. This is the fairy tale kingdom. All of the costumes they're wearing are modern synthetic materials. They're bright, they're colorful, they are not realistic. The sets, the props, the streets, It's like the pages of a children's fairy tale book come to life. And the more colorful and the more jumbled it is, it's like when children get in a room and say, let's pretend, right? So this is such a good example of how you can do colorblind casting that has a good heart and good intentions and is just a load of fun. Now, I recently found something out that kind of blew my mind. I never really got into the Descendants franchise because I was just too old for it, but my oldest daughter loves them, and I'm sure my younger daughter will like them when she gets a little bit older too. But they recently came out with another one called The Rise of Red, and it's like about the Queen of Hearts' daughter going back in time to like try to make her so she's not evil. And they brought back Brandy and Paolo Montalban to play Cinderella and Prince Charming, and they're now the parents of Princess Chloe, who's a character in that. So Disney even managed to tie this back into the Descendants universe. So if you're a fan of Descendants, let me know how much you enjoyed that. There's a very sweet moment in Rise of Red where Brandy sings a little bit of So This Is Love from the Disney Cinderella film. So yeah, but let's see what you guys have to say like about that. Oh, from earlier, Chris says, I still have this CD and the Third Eye Blind CD. I love Third Eye Blind. Go back to the camera. And Georgia Bell says, my kids love this one. Yeah, I showed this one to my kids recently and they loved it, except when we got to the part where Cinderella and the prince were falling in love and they started smooching. My 5-year-old started writhing in agony on the couch, and she had this pillow and she was just like holding it up to her face. And I said, are you okay, honey? And she goes, it's yucky. Oh, I don't like this. It's yucky. And I'm like, that's fine. You can just feel that way for 20 more years. That's fine with me. You just go on thinking that smooching is yucky. Yeah. And Georgia Bell giving a compliment to Rodgers and Hammerstein. Amazing writing team. And the script for their version of Cinderella is quite funny. I think that's part of why I loved that 97 Cinderella so much, is that they nail the humor. Like there's this funny part when the prince is getting to know Cinderella and he goes, well, you'll have to introduce me to, he goes, I'd love to meet your family. And Cinderella's like, no, you wouldn't. And Brandy's acting is, she nails it. Like, it's one of the biggest laughs for me every time I watch it. I've seen it a dozen times and it still makes me laugh. That's how good it is. And Cats and Jammer says, I was a 14-year-old goth when this came out. So this was antithetical to me at the time. Lol. That's fine. That's fine. You know what? I strongly support you being a 14-year-old goth because, the older I get, the more I'm like, oh, the goths were right. They were right. Like a lot of stuff we did at school was pointless, and a lot of stuff is just about conformity, and the music's pretty good, and it makes it very easy to get dressed in the morning because everything you own matches. So yeah, that's totally fine that you were a goth, but can I recommend that you go back and give this one a shot? Because I think even a nice goth kid like you could find something to enjoy in Cinderella. And Ray and Cat's Queen Whoopi, lol. She's great. She's really funny because the queen is a very comic character in this, and she's got great chemistry with the guy who plays the king. So yeah, and then Ben B saying, yeah, please do check out Rise of Red. All of the Descendants films have fantastic music and dance sequences. They're really fun. Those are another really, really good example of how to do colorblind casting right. Again, because there's this immersion in the world of make-believe, and it's not attempting to, it's not doing it for malicious reasons, right? Like I think that's where colorblind casting or race swapping gets annoying, is when it's obviously being done for reasons that don't serve the story. But then you look at like Cinderella, the 97 Cinderella, or the Descendants, and the colorful nature of the cast enriches the world, and it makes it more fun, and it enhances this sense of being in this wondrous fairy tale land, right? And it works, and it's done with a good heart and a good nature, and that's why people like it. So it's not about necessarily objecting to diverse casting. It's about whether or not the people doing the casting were being spiteful, or if they were trying to do something that helped to tell a richer, more beautiful story. So, and then yes, oh yeah, we've got a comment in the chat. Is that Bernadette Peters? It is. She's the wicked stepmother, and she chews up every scene she's in. She has a fantastic song about how she fell in love, but then love fell out with her. So that's why she's so cynical and hard-hearted. And she is, I've never seen Bernadette Peters be more Bernadette Peters. I'll just put it that way. She's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And then Chris saying, I loved Brandy. Wish she kept doing stuff. Yeah, Brandy kind of vanished. I don't know why. I liked her. She was so sweet and wholesome. She always had that kind of like girl next door. Maybe she wasn't cutthroat enough to make it in the music industry. And also in the chat, the goths were right. This sounds like a book I would buy. Maybe I should write that book. Yeah, I'll write like a memoir of being a 90s teen called The Goths Were Right. And I'll thank you in the credits, or you can beat me to it and write it first. Okay. All right. So that at number 4 is 97 Cinderella made for TV. Now, in the 90s, we had not one, but two. Oh, hold on. Sorry, I have lost. There we go. For a second, I lost a screen. In the 90s, we had not one, but two stories that were based on Cinderella. And the other one was Ever After. This came out in 1998, so a year after the Disney TV Cinderella. And that's not really surprising. Everyone loves a Cinderella story. In the same way that Romeo and Juliet is universal, Cinderella stories are also universal. They're, in fact, my favorite kind of folk tale. And I spend a lot of time studying Cinderella stories from around the world because it's a basic emotion that we can all relate to. All of us knows what it feels like to be underappreciated or shoved to the side, and knowing that we have worth. And the cool thing about Cinderella characters is they aren't helpless. It's not just about the pretty dress, although that dress, oh my gosh, that dress. Wow. I would totally wear that dress. But it's not about the dress per se. What it's about is that a Cinderella character is ready when her moment comes, or his, because you can't have male Cinderella characters like, say, Rocky from the Rocky films. You must be ready when your moment comes. Prince Charming isn't going to turn you into Cinderella. You have to be Cinderella so Prince Charming will see it when you finally get your moment. And yeah, and I see a comment in the chat about Angelica Huston. She was so good. She was not afraid to just lean in and go full villain. She's great in this. And, of course, we have DeGray Scott, who is an extremely charming prince in this. This movie is peak 90s girl power. This is like when the Spice Girls are coming out, and it's before girl power soured into girl boss, which is sometimes what we have now. Like, this was a nice time before it got cynical. Like, this is a girl who loves to read, and she knows how to sword fight, and she's good at negotiating, and she's good at speaking up for herself. But everything she does is still like mostly physically realistic, right? Like, she doesn't ninja kick someone in the head and then, totally overpower a bunch of very accommodating stuntmen, right? Like, which is kind of what you can get these days with like the girl boss trope. So I'd like us to take things back to the 90s when we have more of this like fun, spunky girl power that elevates girls without pushing men down, right? Like, that was something that happened in the 90s is you had, women and young women being proud of themselves and being assertive, but there wasn't the sense that men were the enemies. It was just that the girls could stand up and hold their own with them, right? But let's see what you guys think about that. Yeah, we've got, so in the chat here, love the dress and the wings. I love the dress and the wings too. That costume was so good. I don't care that it's unrealistic that Leonardo da Vinci was in this film. Or, you know what? I'm even going to let it slide that they show the Mona Lisa on canvas when in fact, because they show it rolled up. If you remember in the scene where the painting is stolen, in fact, the Mona Lisa is painted on a plank of wood, but I don't care. I don't care. I just really don't care. It's too much fun. And Georgia says, this one was good as long as you don't know your history or don't care about history. Well, I think, yeah, exactly. So this is a Cinderella story. If you look at the title, it says Ever After, a Cinderella story. I think really what it's just doing is borrowing the historical period as a costume. I mean, there's too much in it that's completely anachronistic. Like, Yeah, Cinderella saying to the prince, "A girl does what she can" at one point, which is so cute, and I love it, and I'm here for it. This is a 1990s movie in costume, right? And it's using the historical period as costume. We've also got Katzenjammer saying, "Not sure if this is my favorite Drew movie. Good movie though, but absolute favorite Drew performance. It is really good, and it was nice to see her kind of. She had a rough childhood and all of that, and it was nice to see her come back. And this movie was kind of like, I think this movie really established her as being like back and working properly and doing really well, and she's had a great career since." And Chris agreeing, "Yep, it's about inner power for sure." And then, yes, so Aged Boomer in the chat, wasn't Leonardo da Vinci the fairy godmother? Yes, he was. He essentially took the role of the fairy godmother, which is fine. So, like, I think if you're going for a strict interpretation of the Cinderella story, what you want is, so the fairy godmother and the wicked stepmother being female characters makes sense, because what you have with a Cinderella character is she loses her biological mother, right? And then the stepmother is supposed to do her duty. So a good stepmother would look after this child and take the place of the mother, but instead she violates her responsibilities to Cinderella and then doesn't look after her. And so the fairy godmother has to step in, but it's just fine that Da Vinci takes this, because again, it's all so fun. And then you get those cool wings that look like the sketches in the Da Vinci books. And I think if you're watching this movie with teenagers, it's a fun way to kind of maybe introduce some of this stuff. Like any of these movies, you can use these to get kids interested in the literature behind them or the historical periods that they're in. And like when my daughter first saw this movie, she got interested. She really did. And so we ended up looking at Da Vinci sketches for like probably an hour after the first time she saw this movie. So she now not only loves this movie, it's like her favorite. If she's like homesick from school, she's like, "Oh, I want to watch Ever After." And I'm like, yeah, I get it. Like, this is definitely a movie like that for me. I have to say, as well as the entire 1995 Pride and Prejudice series. Like, if you've got the flu, it's like, yeah, I'll lay on the couch for 6 hours and watch Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth get together. But this makes a very good sick day movie. Katzenjammer says, oh, so here we go. H. Boomer says, "I like that one of the stepsisters looked like," yeah, she got her own chance at romance. Yeah, so in this one, you had one of the stepsisters stay wicked, and one of them who never wanted to be wicked, but she was also trapped in the toxic family. And so she ends up falling in love with one of the courtiers, and good for them. The scene at the ball is very cute where they both turn out to be horses, and then they kind of like do this little playful interaction, which actually matches the historical period, that kind of playful revelation and playing a role, very much in keeping with a Renaissance masque. And very much land of make-believe, to borrow your phrase. It is, yes. This is also land of make-believe, which is why you can let stuff like that slide. All right. And then, yeah. Ray and Kat says, "E.T. went home. Drew moved on." She did. Good for her. And then Chris says, "I love all the Cinderella retellings. It's my favorite." Yes, it's my favorite too. All right. Now, in the number 2 position, this is a movie I've watched so many times. So many times. And it is based on Emma by Jane Austen. And that is Clueless. This is just, this movie is so much fun. It's just adorable. So Emma by Jane Austen is about a very rich, very out of touch girl who she's wealthy, and she lives in a little English village, and she doesn't know very much about the world. And so she thinks that she can just like play matchmaker and run people's lives. And she ends up learning the hard way that this is not a great way to behave. It's not my favorite Jane Austen novel. And Jane Austen even knew that. Like, I think she wrote to her sister saying that she was going to take a heroine that not very many people would like except for her. I actually really love Clueless though, and I think that's because the character of Cher, who is representing the character of Emma, she is a bit more sweet. She is less stubbornly ignorant, maybe is how I would put it. Like, Emma in the book, it really takes her a long time to figure out how inappropriate a lot of her behavior is and how selfish she is. Whereas Cher is just more, she's sheltered and pampered, but she has a genuinely good heart, and everything she does really comes from a much better place, or at least the way I have read Emma. I don't know. I see Emma as slightly more of a bit of a priggish snob, and Cher genuinely cares about her friends. She genuinely wants to do things, but she's just a little bit clueless, as the title suggests. And we also have, of course, a very, very young, dreamy Paul Rudd. And I think this movie probably inspired millions of crushes. And he basically looks the same. I don't know what his secret is, but he's amazing. Let's see what you guys think about this one. Go. All right, let's see what the chat thinks. Oh, there's an Asian version of Cinderella. Yes, well, I mean, no doubt there's many. So if you're speaking about Cinderella stories, I actually covered on this show a while ago. There's a version from ancient China called Ye Xian, which even involves a slipper. It's a really, really good one. If you go over to my storytelling channel, I have a little second channel where I do storytelling, and I've got a reading of Ye Xian over there that you can check out if you want to hear it. And then Ben says, in Australia, we've had a lot of issues working out the LA slang. I can imagine that. Part of the reason I love Clueless so much is because it really, really, it very definitely reflects how we talked back then, like the kind of slang that they used. Because there are, even though people think of the Los Angeles dialect as being what you hear on TV, and, when I'm like speaking with you guys or when I'm speaking with people from elsewhere, I kind of use that flat, neutral dialect, the one that you hear on TV and movies, but there is a very heavy local dialect, as there is everywhere, which is kind of the, Bill and Ted, Clueless, the kind of accents you hear in there, and it can be a little difficult. Another thing people do a lot in Los Angeles is we use a lot of words in Spanish. Like, I grew up speaking both English and Spanish because I was just surrounded by Spanish speakers. And sometimes there's a word in Spanish or a word in English that isn't in the other language. And so it's really common to just kind of slide in and out, and they call it Spanglish. So that we would speak that way all the time. I'd be interested to know specifically what words in Clueless you found the most confusing. Some of it I could see where, like, there's different vocabulary terms about school, because even things like, I live in England, so sometimes when I'm explaining stuff to people back home, like, Americans wouldn't know what, say, A levels were. But those are like a standardized test that you take later on before you go to university. Whereas over here, they may or may not have heard of, say, like the SAT, which is a standardized test you'd take in America. But yeah, let me know if there's specific words from Clueless that just didn't translate over to other cultures. Chris says, love Clueless. Just saw it with my daughter. She was surprised. She ends up with her stepbrother-in-law. Well, the reason they did that in the movie, they do make a joke about it where she's like, he's not my brother. You were barely married to his mom. You get the idea that this dad is on like his fifth marriage, right? Like he's bounced around between wives. In the book, Emma, Mr. Knightley is initially kind of like a brotherly character to Emma. They're not related, but he's described as being brotherly to her. So that was kind of the way that they brought that in, is that, like, that they have this relationship where they knew each other when they're younger, and now they're maturing, and so their relationship is changing a little bit. Katzen says, I love Clueless. So funny and such a clever adaptation. The language in Clueless is so good. It's a beautifully written script. As with Everywhere, we had high school drama, and it's good fodder for stories. Oh yeah, Chris, I love Cher's outfits, the closet picking. You remember the software? That is some 90s software right there. I think that would make kids laugh. They would be like, what is this ancient technology? Just the really like heavy, chunky UI. I mean, everything is so sleek and streamlined these days. I think most kids would have no idea what they were looking at if you like opened up AOL and fired up a modem and they heard the sound. The kids would be like, and you ask them like, what do you think that is? They'd just be like, what is wrong with your computer? And And then Georgia says Mr. Knightley was Emma's brother-in-law. His brother married her sister. Yeah, it's true. This is where in Emma, it's this really small community. And also because of the social class structure at the time, your pickings were pretty limited. So it was pretty common for these social groups to be very closely related at the time. Okay. All right. So we've got a comment on, the slang that was hard to follow. So nice stems. Now, a thing to know about the character of Elton is super into like the 1940s and 1950s. So nice stems is actually very old slang, stems meaning legs. So that's actually, it would have been anachronistic at the time, but it was showing how cool he was because in the 90s, I mean, tell me if you're from other countries. Definitely in America in the 90s, there's this big swing revival because you had kind of like the ska sound and big band revival and going to swing dances and knowing how to say like Lindy Hop and things like that were cool. So you would get these guys who would dress in sort of a 1950s style. There was that movie Swingers starring, it was like Jon Favreau's big break and it had Vince Vaughn. They very much epitomized that with kind of the 1950s style shirts they wore. And surfing the crimson wave. So the term surfing the crimson wave stumped you. Well, what can I say? We have all kinds of euphemisms. I will say LA slang. I've realized since moving to England how many terms we have for vomiting. So here they just say, like in Britain, they'll just say sick or vomit. And I was like, no, we've got like barf, upchuck, technicolor yawn, blow chunks, hurl, spew. We had so many different words for barfing, and I do not know why, but they're definitely descriptive and colorful. And Katzen says the 2020 adaptation with Anya Taylor-Joy was good too. I did like the costumes and the visual styles of that one. Yeah. And it definitely, it leaned into that. It still didn't make me love the character of Emma, but I loved the acting and the direction and the stagecraft in that interpretation of Emma. So in the chat, someone's saying how that there've been reaction videos where modern day like Gen Alpha kids try out 90s computers. Would they even know how to turn one on, right? Like they look at the monitor and be like, why is it a box? Would they even know how to use a floppy drive or anything like that? Fantastic. And Chris mentioning, yeah, some cool guys. They did the 50s style cool thing. Oh, so you've never heard the term Technicolor yawn. Well, there you go. Congratulations and you're welcome. I'm so glad that I've edified you with some extremely sophisticated Los Angeles slang. Well, I think that wraps up Clueless, which was in our number 2 spot. I don't think it's going to surprise any of you who have seen the show before what's in the number 1 spot, although I have to say it was juggling between Clueless and this one. And this is a movie which was actually inspired by Clueless. So when Clueless came out, then it was the filmmakers who ended up making this movie were like, oh, what a great idea. Let's look around for one. And what they wanted to look for was a Shakespeare-based film. And that one is, there we go. There it is. And so this one is 10 Things I Hate About You, which I have just done a series of episodes on. I don't think you can beat this. In so many ways, this is peak teen comedy. It's got the high school drama. It's got our young, fun cast. There are so many people in this movie who have gone on to have really spectacular careers. You've got Heath Ledger, may he rest, like such a talented guy. He's just so expressive, and he manages to play this character that is based on Petruchio from The Taming of the Shrew without cynicism, right? It would be really, really easy to play this role like a complete villain. And he brings some complexity and warmth to the role. And you also understand why Kat, played brilliantly by Julia Stiles, of course. You understand why she is the way she is. She lost her mother in a very traumatic way. Like her mother walked out on the family, and that's really going to be hard on a kid to lose a parent in that way. And then, she had a very negative relationship experience too early when she wasn't ready for it. So even though she is very cranky, you can understand why. And they both have this beautiful story arc. And I think this movie does such a good job of very realistically capturing how teenagers looked and dressed. I mean, some of it's not that realistic. Like, very few clubs allow under 18s, like you see in this scene. But whatever, whatever, who cares? And the chemistry between these two, so fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So, also, if you remember from 10 Things I Hate About You, you had the very, very memorable Allison Janney playing the completely insane guidance counselor. She's hardly in the movie at all, but she's so memorable and she's so funny. And I like that this is another one that's in the land of make-believe. It's not trying to be super realistic because the plot's a farce, right? But I like how in this movie, the characters who are teachers say what teachers think, but then they filter and say differently, right? Like if 10 Things I Hate About You was trying to be realistic, the lines spoken by the English teacher and the guidance counselor would be very, very different. But what we're hearing is what's in their heads, and it's extremely funny. So please tell me if you agree or disagree with any of my rankings. I'm very happy to have you disagree with me because this is my ranking and your ranking might be a little bit different. But yeah, let's catch up and see what you guys think. This is going back to what kids would do with 90s computers. And Ray says, if you could even find a landline now to plug your modem into, that's true. Yeah, we don't have a landline anymore. We got rid of ours. It was weird. The phone company paid us to get rid of our landline. So there you go. I'll have to have like a CB radio in case of emergency or something. And Ray also says, gotta love a Heath Ledger movie. I do. It was interesting comparing 10 Things I Hate About You and A Knight's Tale, which is another one I just love because, once upon a time I thought I wanted to like go the academic route. And so I studied medieval literature in university. And the period around Chaucer is what I studied. So I really enjoyed that. And it's funny because you don't think of Heath Ledger particularly as being like a singer or a dancer, but he ends up singing and dancing in 10 Things I Hate About You, and then also dancing in A Knight's Tale. And both kind of have that like, saucy, the saucy girl who wins him over and drives him a little bit nuts, but they get together in the end. Oh yeah. No, there's a comment here about Kat's hair. Julia Stiles' hair is so beautiful and it's beautifully styled. But the thing I like about it is, again, all of the hairstyles in the film look like the way people actually wore their hair back then. And not only that, it looked like the kids could have styled their hair themselves. Very often in movies, when you look at teenagers, their hair's like a little too perfect because the costume department did their hair. And they really, I think it happens in all of the characters. So it had to have been a deliberate choice that they did not overstyle anyone in the film. You really would see kids who looked like that at school, and it was nice. And we've got another comment here saying, with such solid grounding in the story writing, I do, though, dread to think what the result would be if this one was adapted to the current age. I don't even think they'd do it. I think they'd be like, The Taming of the Shrew is problematic, right? And if you choose to read it that way, of course, but like the way I have never, ever taken The Taming of the Shrew seriously. It is clearly meant to be taken about as seriously as Punch and Judy, which probably also wouldn't be acceptable today because, I don't know, probably violent trigger warning, something like that. Anyway, I've never thought that the way to read The Taming of the Shrew is to take it seriously. I see it as playful and fun. And even in Shakespeare's day, there was also that debate, but people still saw it as just a farce and a bit of fun because it's coming from the Italian commedia dell'arte tradition, which is this very broad, slapstick, silly. It's about the performance of the wordplay and the interaction of the characters. You're not meant to think of anyone on the stage as like a very realistic person at all. So yeah, but unfortunately, I suspect these days they take it too seriously. I'm happy to say we've got loads of chat and it keeps zooming by here, so I have to scroll back to catch up with you guys. Loved the soundtrack. Oh, the soundtrack was really good. They had like what was the name of the band? Letters to Cleo. Did a couple of songs on there, but then you also had Save Ferris in the prom scene, and so they sang along. I loved Save Ferris. They were really good. Oh, and then I've been asked if I could list my rankings again. Okay, good idea. Let's wrap up and go back over the 8 rankings. Okay, so the 8 teen films from the 90s, which were based on literature. At the bottom, I had O, which was an adaptation of Othello by William Shakespeare. Number 7 was Cruel Intentions, which was an adaptation of Dangerous Liaisons, a 1782 novel. Number 6 was She's All That, which was based on George Bernard Shaw's play Pygmalion, which was in turn based on the Greek legend of Pygmalion. And then in the number 5 position, I had Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. Number 4 was the 1997 TV adaptation of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, based on Charles Perrault's Cinderella. Number 3 was Ever After, also based on Charles Perrault's Cinderella, but with some Spice Girls style girl power changes. Number 2 was Clueless, which was based on Jane Austen's Emma. And in the number 1 position, 10 Things I Hate About You, based on William Shakespeare's The Taming of the Shrew. So that's our ranking there. Yeah. So again, and if since you've just joined the stream, I totally invite anyone to disagree and provide their own ranking. And I'd be interested to know why you like some more than others, or if, like me, you actually found it hard to do the ranking because so many of them were so good. And then, yeah, we've got Katzen saying, you really can't beat 10 Things. You can't. The cast, just the performances, it's so good. Ben says, my 7-year-old daughter asked me how my iPod has music when it's not connected to the internet. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Like, I've even had to explain to my kids that things like smartphones have not existed that long. It's just that they've existed for all of their lives. So I was explaining to my 5-year-old the other day that when I was a kid, the phone was a large, heavy object that was bolted to the wall, and it had a long curly cord because you had to have the receiver connected or it wouldn't work. And she had to have me draw it. She was just like, oh, wait, I don't get it. And I was like, yeah. And there were no games on the phone. It had a spinny thing for the numbers, and then you could call people, and that was it. And she goes, and she said, like, but how did you play games? And I was like, well, I played games on my Nintendo, and then my Sega, and then my Xbox, but you didn't play games on your phone when I was a kid. We got other fans of A Knight's Tale in here. And Ray says, my decrepit old phone line came loose from the pole and I wasn't using it anyway, so they removed it. Yeah, they are getting rid of those landlines. Yeah, we've got, so Kolchak saying, today the taming of the shrew would be reversed. She would be tamed and would break free in some way. Maybe. And it's not that you couldn't do something interesting with that, right? Because that's what George Bernard Shaw did with Pygmalion. So the original story of Pygmalion, the statue's turned into a woman, they are in love, and they live happily ever after. George Bernard Shaw put a spin on it, and this was way back in 1912, where Eliza doesn't stay with Henry Higgins. She falls in love with someone else and she moves on with her life, but she does stay friends with him. So she redefines their relationship in her own terms, and that's okay because she's a full person. And of course she wants to do things in her own way. So it's not that you couldn't do the taming of the shrew with a twist ending. But again, as with like anything you swap in a story, whether it's the gender of the characters, the race of the characters, a plot element, it must be done with love for the story and to serve the story, not to spite the story, because audiences can tell when you don't love and respect the story that you're adapting. Oh, okay. So we've got Ray saying he's never seen a bunch of these movies. Well, now's your chance. You've had your introduction. And then also saying, all we had at first was Napster for free music before it got shut down. Yep. And I will just say I'll take the fifth on that topic. The Fifth Amendment in the United States protects people from self-incrimination. Chris says, they would ruin it. She probably would never have forgiven him and been independent. Maybe, yeah. It's easier to mess up a story than it is to do right by it. And Llama Dungeon says, I mean, when you look at it from a young perspective, a phone app is the least used feature of a smartphone. Yeah, it's true. Totally alien. The culture that we're growing up in now is so different. It's so different. Yeah. Kind of a topic away from literature, but it's definitely one I could get sidetracked by. And then Ray saying, I had a crush on Audrey Hepburn, still do. Come on. Everyone's got a little bit of a crush on Audrey Hepburn in some way. I don't necessarily even mean like in a romantic sense. She's just luminous in everything she did. She's just so luminous. And we've got comment here. My 6-year-old could not contemplate not having a remote control to change the TV channel. I had to explain that. So here's the difference between even me and my youngest sister, there's a 14-year difference between us. I came from a pretty big family. I was the oldest. We were watching Nick at Night. So if you're American, Nickelodeon is like a kids TV channel. And then Nick at Night was a separate channel that came along later. It started as evening programming. It would play like reruns from the 1950s and 60s. And they would sometimes have retro ads. And one of them went, don't touch that dial. And my sister, who was like 8 or 9 at the time, went, don't touch. What's a dial? And I was like, okay. Back in the olden days, TVs had a dial on the front because there was a physical channel that you had to click it into to get the signal for the channel. Blew her mind. And that was within one family. So strictly speaking, same generation, but obviously very different experiences because she never had a TV like that. And I did. When I was little, I was the remote control. My parents would say, get up and change the channel. So I was the remote control. And Ray says, on TVs now, you have to have a remote to do anything. All the buttons and dials are gone. It's true. Or if they have any, they're like these tiny flat things on the side of the TV and you can't even read what they say. But yeah, that's another topic for another day. Anyway, I hope all of you guys enjoyed that. I know I did. I had fun going down that memory lane. The reason I got started on that is that I've been looking into how to get kids interested in Shakespeare this year. And I just kept going back to the great Shakespeare revival that happened in the 90s. And I was like, but you know, there's a lot of other really fun literature adaptations. You can use any of these to just, well, first enjoy yourself, have fun, or take a trip down memory lane if you're my age. But if you've got kids, if you're a teacher, if you want to get kids interested in great literature, I have really come to believe that it's pretty rare that you can just hand a kid a book and go, read this. This is literature and you'll appreciate it and have a good time reading it. The best way to get kids interested is to introduce it with tempting little morsels, right? A really great adaptation, a really great scene, a snippet. You don't make them eat the whole thing, right? Think of literature and expanding your mind as a meal. You want to enjoy your meal and you want it to be presented beautifully. And if you take a kid out to like a restaurant from some cuisine that they've never experienced before, they're going to look at everything on the menu and go, no, I want a hamburger, right? And it's very easy to dismiss that and say, oh, you're just being picky. Oh, you're not trying. But wouldn't it be better if there was a way to introduce these new flavors, these new stories, these more complicated tastes, introduce them in small, digestible, pleasant ways? If you watch Clueless with your teenager, that teenager will be interested in picking up some Jane Austen. Maybe not right away, but you could talk about it a little bit and make some comparisons. It also means that because the kids already experienced the pattern of the story, it'll be more familiar when they go back to the older, more complicated, heavier literature. And so they've trained and they're ready to do a little bit more of that heavy lifting. I really, really believe in that. So please watch these movies to have fun and just enjoy yourself. But yeah, if you want to get kids interested, I can't recommend anything better than the awesome 90s teen comedies that I grew up with. Thanks for all of you joining tonight. Thanks for the memories in the chat. Thank you for the memories. You guys helped me remember a couple of fun moments that have been buried in the back of my brain. So yeah, I'm going to head to bed and I hope I've given you some fun things to add to your watch list. And as always, Thanks for listening, and I will see you in the next one.